I was so excited when I decided to stop using Squarespace and Wix for my websites and start using WordPress, mainly because I discovered it was going to save me a ton of money. And then I spent about a year spinning my wheels because I couldn't figure out how to actually get started creating my first page. How do I get to this page builder that I saw in the videos? Where do I go? Where do I log in? I got really frustrated. Fast forward about a year later, and now I think WordPress website building is really one of my favorite hobbies. I'm not an expert by any means, but I've certainly gotten over that first initial hump where I feel like I can create a new website fairly quickly. So this video is really designed for me about a year ago. And if you're in a similar place, stick around because I'm going to tell you the 3 big epiphanies, light bulb moments that I had. So if you want to create your own WordPress website, you can do so. Before we dive into that, hey, my name is Amanda. Normally on this channel, I record videos that are ed tech tutorials. So I talk about how to create a digital escape room or how to use Google Forms or Google Slides or different things in Canvas. And this video is going to be a little different for 2 main reasons. Number 1, I'm going to be talking about WordPress, mainly because it is a new passion project of mine. It's something I've really enjoyed nerding out about a lot. So if you have questions or you're in the same boat, let me know in the comments if you would like to see more videos about WordPress. The second way this is going to be mainly different is that I'm not going to show any step-by-step tutorials. And I can do more of those kind of screen capture sharing in other videos. If you want to see the back end of my WordPress or learn more about it, just let me know. Also, like I said, full disclaimer, I am not a WordPress expert. So if you happen to be a WordPress expert and I say something that is just off the wall, please let me know that as well. But really, this is designed for those complete WordPress newbies out there, like I was, just to tell you some of the things that the experienced WordPress bloggers probably don't even think they need to mention. So without further ado, here are the 3 big light bulb moments that I had that allowed me to actually get started creating WordPress websites. And like I hoped, it is significantly cheaper than using a Squarespace or a Wix for what I like to do. And I feel like I have a lot more control of the website that I create. So those were the 2 things that I was really interested in using WordPress for. So let's dive in. The very first thing that I had to figure out was that WordPress is very much an a la carte solution, meaning unlike something like a Squarespace where you just log in and everything's there for you, when you are deciding to create your website with WordPress, what you're actually making the decision to do is to make a bunch more decisions. You're going to have to make 3, 4, 5 at least more key decisions about what tool you're going to use and where you're going to purchase something and how much you want to spend before you can actually get up and running with WordPress. So here are the things you're going to have to figure out. Number 1, you have to pick your domain and your domain hosting. So your domain is like the web address, the URL that people put into their browser when they want to go to your website. And that is something that you do have to purchase. It's not super expensive, but it is something that you will have to buy. So I use the site Namecheap for my domains and I've been really happy with them. I started with GoDaddy. Now I have everything on Namecheap. I should also say with all these tools, none of this is sponsored by any means. These are just the tools that I use and I am really happy with all of them. So feel free to steal all of my decisions and just use the ones that I'm using. I would recommend them all for people getting started because they've worked for me. So with that said, I use Namecheap for the website where I get my URLs, my domain names. You can actually buy a domain for $10 a year or less, depending on what it is. So it's not a huge price investment. I think a lot of people think that it's going to be really expensive, and it certainly doesn't have to be. So that's the first thing. You have to decide what domain you're going to use and where you're going to buy it. Second thing is you have to decide what service or what website is going to host your WordPress site. This is where you may have heard the phrase self-hosted come into play when people are talking about WordPress. I used to think that meant that I had to store all the files and all the information for my site on my own computer, and that seemed really intimidating. That's not the case at all. You just have to pay another service. They do security and backups and all of that kind of stuff. So the site I use for that is called Siteground. I really like them, and I have their kind of middle package that allows me to do unlimited websites. That was really something I wanted. It was something that turned me off of, let's say, Squarespace or even Wix, because I was going to have to pay their sort of custom fees per website that I wanted to have. Whereas with this particular bundle that I have with Siteground, I can put as many sites as I want on it. So Siteground is the hosting platform. You also have to decide on your theme. And this is where, coming from that Squarespace and Wix world, I really just kind of thought the theme was the template, and I wasted a ton of time trying to find the perfect theme that was going to be what I wanted. What I've since learned, at least with modern themes, and this is the part where if you are an actual WordPress expert, tell me if I'm wrong, I think of themes now as if deciding between, let's say, PowerPoint, Google Slides, Keynote, and maybe Prezi for a presentation. The different themes you can pick from, and there's a ton, are kind of like those different things. They all get you to about the same place, but they have different features and a slightly different interface, and it's just a matter of personal preference on what you can do with each of them. That's really what themes are like. Once I figured that out, I decided to find a theme that was just going to give me as much creative freedom as possible. With that in mind, the theme I went with is called Kadence. And so far I really like it. It's given me a lot of control over what my website looks like. So I have my URL hosting, my site hosting, my theme, and those are the three things you really have to pick. You will have to pay for your domain. You will have to pay for your site hosting, unless you can find, I don't know, a friend or somebody who has a plan like me that would let you sort of piggyback onto it. Those are the two things you have to pay for. The theme you do not have to pay for. I have the free version of Kadence and it works great. The fourth thing that's kind of optional, but I would recommend, is you will probably want to pick a page builder tool. A page builder is what takes WordPress and makes it a little more like Squarespace and Wix. Back in the day, apparently WordPress websites had to be coded and you had to know all this fancy code to build them. And with page builders, that is not the case anymore. They're a lot more drag and drop like sites you might be more familiar with. There is actually, I think the newest version of WordPress is a little bit more like that too. It's called Gutenberg and it's got kind of a little more of a drag and droppy kind of feel. And so some people are just using that. I really like using the page builder that I use, which is Elementor, and that's something else you have to add onto your WordPress website. But I use the free version, so again, there's no cost on that. With just about all of these, you can always get fancier versions and start spending money, but if you're a beginner, you don't want to spend all that money right away. You want to do it as cheaply as you can. So all the things I use are about as cheap as they can be. So Elementor is what I use for my page builder. On top of that, then there's a ton of what's called plugins, which the closest thing I can think of to compare them to is like a Chrome browser extension, but they're things you can add into your website for very specific things. I have just started scratching the surface with these, I know, but for example, I use one plugin for my forms on my website. There's a plugin that lets you do that. There's another plugin that makes it so that when I share one of my site links on Facebook, the picture that I want shows up, which was a very puzzling thing that didn't work for a while. So lots of different things. I use another plugin to create online courses on my website. Tons of a la carte things that you can customize onto your WordPress website once you make those sort of main decisions. Okay, so that's really the first big thing I had to figure out, is that deciding to use WordPress means deciding to make a lot more decisions. The second thing kind of falls into that umbrella, but it's really realizing that the default out-of-the-box settings for WordPress are not what you want, more than likely. By default, WordPress is going to give you a page of your blog posts, and that's probably not what most people want for their website. And so there's a lot of little setting tweaks that you're gonna have to do when you go in and get started creating with WordPress. And it's kind of pesky because they're kind of hidden and it's kind of unintuitive as to where these are. What I did to get all that kind of figured out, and this is probably a good tip, is I signed up for a beta version of an online course that was teaching people how to use WordPress. And I just followed that person click by click because they took us through those things. I'll put a link to her website below because it really did help get me started in WordPress. I actually don't use very many of the tools that she recommended now, but it was really helpful for me to get started to see all those little pesky clicks that you have to do. If you don't want to buy an online course or you can't find a free one, you can also just go to YouTube. There's a ton of videos. The thing you'll want to make sure to do is make sure to find a video with somebody who's using the same domain host that you have and somebody that's using the same server that you have. So I would go in and I would start searching for Kadence, Siteground, WordPress tutorials. And then you'll find people who take you click by click through it. If somebody is not using those same extra a la carte tools as you, the videos are not going to be super helpful. Just know that it's not just you. You probably will need a little bit of help. You need somebody to walk you through at least the first couple of times on how to make all those little setting tweaks so that it's not just kind of a default clunky page of blog posts, but it's actually the beautiful page that you want. Okay, the last big aha light bulb moment I had is kind of silly in retrospect, but I originally had no idea how to log back in to my WordPress site. I was used to things, like I said, with Squarespace and Wix, where you'd go to squarespace.com and log into your account, and then there's a list of all your different websites. I could not find where that login was when I came to WordPress. What I have since learned is that to log in to your WordPress website, once you get it hooked up with your domain and your server and your hosting and all of those things, is that once that's all set up, you can go to your URL/admin and log in. And you will have a separate username and password for every WordPress website that you create. Now, I technically can log into my Siteground and get to all of the sites that I have hosted on there through that page, but most of the time that's not what I do because it's just a lot more cumbersome than what I want. I just go to the URL I am using.com/admin, and then I can log in there, and that takes me to the back end of the website. For some reason, that little fact just was not in any of the tutorials that I found. I think it just goes without saying for a lot of more advanced bloggers and teachers. So if you can't figure out how to log in, once you get it all set up the first time, which probably will happen through your server, like when I do SiteGround, it says, do you want to do a new WordPress website? And I go through that. Once that's all done, then you can just do your URL/admin and log in from there. Hopefully this helps you. Like I said, I wanted to record this for someone who might be in the same place I was a year ago, which is trying to get started and not knowing what to do. If you have questions, please let me know in the comments. I do reply to all of them. And if there's interest, I'd love to make more WordPress videos because, like I said, it's something I just really love talking about and nerding out about, and I'd love to keep doing it here on YouTube. I hope you have a wonderful day. Good luck with your first WordPress website, and I'll talk to you soon.